Welcome to Commerce Media Matters, your go-to podcast for unpacking the world of commerce media. Here, we catch up with industry leaders on news, research, insights, perspectives, and everything in between.
Hi, I'm Paul, Chief Growth Officer at Voodoo.
And I'm Nick, founder and CEO at Voodoo. And today we've got a brilliant guest in the chair.
Yes, we do. We're joined by Roger Dunn, a retail media veteran of over 2 decades in e-commerce and in the retail space. He was the first person in Australia to be Amazon advertising certified and was a founding member of the IAB Australia Retail Media Council. He's built a standout career transforming how brands connect with consumers in the digital age. He loves a Friday retail media meme, which I actually hang out for every week.
Yeah, me too. Roger has helped many companies navigate the shifting sands of retail, shopper behaviour and media, bringing together commerce, data and storytelling to drive growth. He's the kind of person who sees both the numbers and the human side of how media evolves.
And in this episode, we're going to get into the topic on everyone's lips right now, AI in commerce, from agentic assistance to conversational shopping, what's hype, what's real, and what's already changing customer journeys. So Rog, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you both.
Roger, you've recently launched the AI Commerce Brief newsletter, which is a cracker. Great to be dropping this at this time as well.
Good read.
What inspired you to start it? And what gap in the industry conversation are you hoping to fill by writing about AI's impact on shopping and commerce?
Good question. It definitely feels like the right time to me. So It feels like, as you know, like AI is everywhere. There's announcements every week, every day with new things coming down the track.
Flat out.
It's going to be a big impact on most industries. And obviously my sweet spot is retail, it's e-commerce, it's retail media. So having a look at like how AI is going to be impacting that space is, for me, like super interesting, but also part of the job, right? We've got to understand what's happening and where it's all going.
And you kicked it off with a pretty bold statement too. So you said AI isn't just a tool anymore, it's starting to shop for us. So how do you see autonomous agents changing the shopping journey? And are we heading towards consumers delegating purchasing and all decisions to AI entirely?
Yeah.
Or do you think there's still going to be humans in the loop? Or do you think the trust factor is going to be there for humans?
I've got so many questions, and so has Paul.
Well, I guess the first instance of AI was always the LLMs. It's that natural language interface. That was the first instance where we're asking questions, we're getting answers. But agentic is obviously where it's going to go, where the AI then acts autonomously and can carry out tasks, and shopping being potentially one of those tasks. Mm-hmm. That's probably not here in full form today, but we're seeing, agentic browsers, we're seeing, instances of that coming through. So it is here and it's being tested, but it's not the full story yet. But in terms of like where it's going, I mean, we have to temper it a little bit because it is going to be a percentage of a percentage. Mm-hmm. We think about it, it's a digital activity, and we know e-commerce, depending on your category, is 10 to 20% perhaps of that category. And it's a percentage of that. But I think this is where you can get tied up a little bit in definitions. If your definition of agentic commerce is 100% automated from start to finish, then it's always going to be quite a small amount. But if you start thinking, well, I'm going to do a bit of product research at the top of the funnel and start having it go away and do things and research things, I might still go and buy it in store. I might buy it, myself online, but it's shortening that route to purchase. It's shortening that time.
Absolutely.
It's getting you a better answer, perhaps getting you a better price. And it's all of those things which, it's going to change how we shop.
Yeah. I think the key word for me there you've used is temper, right? Because I'm old now. For the kids out there, listeners, I am old. Might not look at what, Paul?
No, you look at.
Been around long enough to see these cycles come in and out, especially with e-commerce. And sometimes you can get wrapped up in the hype. It's very easy. We know that all the headlines are grabbing attention. When you step back and you go, okay, hold on a second. Let's look at traditional e-commerce versus brick and mortar. What's the market share there? And still brick and mortar is massive compared to online. What I'm hearing from you is you need to take the same approach here, that yes, this is extremely exciting. There is massive announcements happening regularly and there's a big opportunity here, but let's take a breather here and actually understand what it means from a reality perspective, because it's really shaking to the core a lot of retailers and brands is this what's happening? Where are we going? Do I have a business?
Yeah, totally agree. And like that's why I say we should temper it. But then again, if you think about the amount of time and attention it requires to get ready for something like that, even if the numbers aren't there today, then that is probably where you should be spending at least a good portion of time to understand and see where the opportunities are, because there's only so much you can do to improve things that have been now, optimized and enhanced and focused on for so many years. This is where you can make a difference and obviously create new opportunity.
Yeah.
I also like what you said about the definition, Rog. I liked how you said if you take it at the extreme literal that it's going to go and do the shopping and all the transaction and everything for you, then it's a percentage on a percentage on a percentage. But, it's going to, I hope, fuel e-commerce growth because you are going to be able to interact and ask it to shop around for deals and look for choice and help you make decisions and other bits and pieces. And I think you will see the e-commerce journey, benefit, but also the bricks and mortar journey. I mean, people still will want to go in store and, agents will help them get to the decision where they may then go, okay, well, I still want my final look in store. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's why I say, it depends on your definition, because there are tons of use cases that you can use it for that still end up with an in-store purchase. It's just shortening that route to purchase. I think the interesting thing about this sort of macro trend that we're seeing is that it's being released to consumers at exactly the same time as it's being released to businesses. There's almost a consumer-led trend where we've been given this ChatGPT interface or other LLMs, and we're already tinkering with it. We're already using it. We're already wondering where we're going to kind of find products and use it for these kind of purposes as a consumer. And businesses haven't had that. It's not like they've had a long life cycle of setting up some MarTech solution to get ready for this. It's like it's here and it's now, and it's like, what do we do today?
With that in mind, there's been a lot of talk about the extension of these LLMs and ChatGPT moving into the browsers and the browser wars. With ChatGPT expanding its capabilities and rolling out features like Atlas, do you think AI tools like ChatGPT could eventually replace traditional search engines like Google, or is Google just too much of a behemoth? And it appears that Google's doing a good job at kind of keeping up with the Joneses.
Well, there's a very strong argument to make that Google is the leading AI company today, or, at the moment, even if they obviously have this sort of dilemma of protecting a business model that is very lucrative in search and the 10 blue links and moving people over to a much quicker, shorter experience to an answer that AI can provide. And how do you manage that without, impacting your very kind of lucrative bottom line?
Yeah.
So I think that they've got all the tools in the bag. They've got their own, chips even. So they're not in a bad place in terms of opening up this opportunity. So yeah, it's obviously interesting to see them having some challenges in the browser space, where we've got Comet from Perplexity and Atlas browser with the recent one from ChatGPT. So interesting to see how that pushes innovation and introduces, a new way of working. But I can't imagine it'll be too long before Chrome has a few extra features coming through the pipeline, but
I'm sure.
Wait and see.
Yeah. I'm building on that. Do you see, therefore, traditional SEO strategies evolving? We're moving towards what we call search everywhere optimization, where AEO and GEO become new drivers for visibility. I mean, from your perspective, where you're at the moment, Rog, how's your business sort of working towards optimizing for LLMs and Atlas and Comet and those sorts of things?
Yeah, so obviously it is a new way of searching. And if you think about the type of search that happens, it's not just very short keywords that are being punched in. It's full sentences with a lot of context. That's the big difference with LLMs. It's context on what you might want to use that product for, or, some solution around it. For us, maybe how do I make this particular cocktail, or what are the best cocktails to have with this particular product? So it's a lot more of a richer experience. And yeah, for us, I guess that's important. I think the first cab off the rank is always to track that and understand what people are using these tools for, so that you can see where the opportunities are, see which sources are being cited and where the information is coming from. And then it's a case of, seeing how you can, turn up in those citations, in those sources. and become the recommended product. So yeah, there's lots of new disciplines, it feels like, coming out, and lots of few new acronyms floating around in terms of, Answer Engine Optimization and general generative AI engine optimization. I think another one, even more specifically, is Agentic Commerce Optimisation, ACO, which is another one which would be about particularly being surfaced for that instant checkout feature in things like ChatGPT, coming up in the product cards, coming up with, eventually down the track, potentially the buy button next to it as well. And I guess that's the interesting thing for us, is trying to see, partly it's what we need to do, but there's probably some big partnerships we need to broach with the retailers, because at the end of the day, that is more likely to be the place where someone buys a product, and how do we surface ourselves in there?
Yeah, we could see a world where it's part of the mandate of, if you're a retailer of any degree trading now online, part of your BAU is you've got, your instant chat integration, your instant checkout integration, and you have to have it or you're not going to be able to trade inside those platforms. It will become BAU, surely.
Well, that's right. I mean, ChatGPT will want the experience to be smooth and actually be surfacing up the information within their own, format in terms of those product cards and having the buy buttons and everything.
Yeah.
So that's where you need to have the plugins like the MCP connections,
absolutely,
the actual product information and context coming through into the platform. And then obviously they launched that other solution, which was the apps solution, where you can at a retailer potentially, and then converse with that retailer's own agent. So you can go a lot deeper in terms of like what products and information you can get from that retailer that way. So different approaches, but probably both. It's probably not an either or. It's, how do we surface in both?
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do we enable and arm our teams within our management to be able to lean into this and get the right skills, know exactly what they're doing, and build out a new competency? So much is changing in this space, and so much is needed. Like you said before, there's new competencies that are required all the time, right? If AI agents are deciding what consumers see, how do brands need to rethink retail media and product feeds and digital shelf optimization? That same team I've just referenced, they're now looking at this, all these new areas that they need to actually, take on board. Retail media has been huge for the last couple of years, but still growing rapidly. How does that come together? What do brands need to think about when it comes to retail media and product feeds and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's still a bit of an unknown, I guess. I mean, if you think about the LLMs themselves, paid opportunities are quite sparse at the moment. So, Sam Altman said he's not all in on advertising in its traditional form anyway. So it's looking more like a commission model there. But other ones have had sponsored prompts and different ways of appearing within those agents. Amazon obviously has sponsored prompts within Rufus as well. So there are definitely, as this gains attention and eyeballs from consumers, there'll be an opportunity to have paid placement in and around that. Obviously, as with retail media, you want it to be as native as possible. You want it to be as least disruptive, and useful in the sense that you're providing a prompt or a product that answers the original question.
Yeah.
So I think there's ways to do it that would work in that sense. And then the unknown, I guess, is if you have a good presence or maybe even a paid presence through retail media on a retailer, how does that then get pulled through into the LLMs? I think that's a big question that we don't really have the answers to yet, but I could see a world where you have a product feed coming through from a retailer, and some of those placements within the feed are still paid placements. They're just surfacing up through a different front end.
Yeah, I agree. I see that as well.
You mentioned Sam Altman, and his views on ads. And he said, be wary of ads that don't feel useful is one of his quotes. He's talked about, performing a service for the user. Affiliate models look more attractive to him. I've seen some of the tests, though, that people have done on LinkedIn where they've used Atlas and tried to do the full agentic shopping journey. And what was interesting is I saw that it did consider the ads as it went through. In fact, you see in the logs that it's clicking on the ads and checking in on the ads like a person would, because that's what an agent essentially does. But how do you see showing up in a traditional ad sense and a brand sense in an AI world? And also for the LLMs or the GPTs or the chatbots, etc., there's only certain place you can go with subscription. How do they monetize? How are they going to have monetization models without, the traditional ad formats that we know of today, Rog? So 2 big questions there.
Yeah, big ones.
Yeah, no. I think you might have to ask Sam for some of these, for the answers to these ones. But
get Sam on the phone.
Yeah. Look, it's hard to think that there isn't a future where there's monetization through ads for these platforms. Like, you see the amount of money going into them through venture funds and the scale and size of them as they grow and the funding behind them. So obviously they need to turn a profit at some point, but we're in this classic phase where it's all about growth, all about user growth, and it's less about the monetization and profit at the moment. But that wheel will turn, as it always does with any big venture, and I'm sure there'll be a world where advertising comes in. We've seen the same for streaming services, right? When they had 0 ads for many years, but
correct,
at some point the model just needs to work. I think they're going to come, and it's going to be part of the mix. How they structure that and whether paid or premium tiers don't have ads still for some time, that's likely to.
I think that's a really good point with regards to the pressures potentially on Altman and his teams to drive more revenue and get to a point of profitability. Yes, it's all about growth scale and the big vision now and North Star, but you're going to have investors that say, hey, we invested in business A, B, and C, and I don't have to name them today, but there's a number of them that were not profitable, brought the ads case in, bang, super profitable, doing really, really well. You can see that use case being lobbed onto the boardroom table going, can't you just do this? This works really, really well. Yeah. You've got the eyeballs, and wherever there's audiences in history, there is advertising. So I feel like Sam's fighting a battle that he can't deliver on.
That's one route, and that's also why e-commerce and commerce is such a rich opportunity here, right?
Yeah.
If you think about companies like Shopify, they've got a big business helping, and they have subscriptions from their businesses that use Shopify. But actually, their biggest line of business is as a payments provider.
Correct.
So the majority of their profit comes through the transaction that flows through.
Mm-hmm. So
if anyone in OpenAI is looking at that, surely that's like a model that they would be also interested in.
Absolutely.
Is there a future where something like ChatGPT isn't just a handoff to a retailer, but becomes a marketplace in and of itself? So products are uploaded there and can be searched and interrogated through the interface.
Yeah.
And then you can have the full transaction. That's not how they're positioning it today, just to be clear. But yeah, that's maybe something for the future.
Well, I think the moves they're making, though, hint towards that's where they're going, right? With the Walmart announcement around, being able to show up there. You've got Etsy and you mentioned the Shopify one. It certainly looks like that's, and then his own comments around, affiliate models are more interesting, and this whole move to instant cart does look like that's the way they're heading. I mean, I'm an optimist, Rog. I'm hoping that Sam does help us evolve the internet away from this messy, mucky advertising ecosystem of the internet of the past. And hopefully this is a change agent for the future where we can see a cleaner, more, transparent advertising ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. And the way they're positioning it today as well is it's different to a marketplace. So if you think about when someone shops on Amazon, or when you sell something on Amazon rather, Amazon still owns that customer. You don't find out who they are, their address, their email. It's just that's shipped to the consumer. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the world of instant checkout on a ChatGPT, the retailer gets handed off the customer and they understand who that is. They can have them in their CRM and their loyalty program, retarget them later.
Yeah.
So it is, I guess from a retailer perspective, a more preferable setup and model in terms of owning the customer.
It's interesting you say that because we had a collaboration podcast with the Mind the Model. I don't know if you know those guys, great podcast. Shout out to the Mind the Model guys. Yeah. One of the questions that we talked about and we discussed at length at South by Southwest was around the fact that is Instant Cart and the data that people like ChatGPT and the other models taking away from the exclusivity that the retailer has and their retail media offering, because the data for what consumers want and what they're shopping on is going to be with OpenAI as well as, say, a Coles or a West Farmers Group, etc. Yeah. But I was interested to hear then you thought that it was good for retailers. So can you talk to that?
Mm. Well, a sort of way to think about it, I think, is if you think about the relationship between a retailer and Google as a broader search company with YouTube, with other, Gmail, always knew a different set of data around a consumer. It has a broader set of information and more context in different areas. And then the retailer, once the consumers kind of passed through to the retailer and they bought something, obviously the retailer has its own view on that consumer through its loyalty program and habitual buying behavior and what's in the cart right now. So those two worlds were already, a different view on the same consumer, both very valuable in different ways. And I think for an LLM, it's going to be something similar. Like your LLM is going to get to know you very well. It'll have good context. It'll know lots about you and like what you've been searching for, and in the same way that a search engine did. But it won't have the full story. And I think the retailer still has a lot of value in that and has the consumer that they can then target and, understand what complementary products might work for that shopper.
I couldn't agree more, Rog. And I feel like it's, democratization a little bit because there's a couple more AI players than just the big search engine. So for me, I'm actually excited about what it presents for the retail media ecosystem, like you said. And
very personalized, like that information, if it can then be passed through to the retailer, can be very insightful in terms of like driving, a good shopping experience as well. It can be very personalized. It can be, a very thoughtful data set that can provide good insight to the retailer too.
Absolutely. So, Rod, look, something that I find fascinating is we have the massive opportunity and a retailer like Walmart stepping and going, we're going to do this, right? This is for us. And now we've even heard from Jas in the last week saying, we're going to start talking to third-party agentic commerce partners. That's something we're going to look at. And we've seen some announcements from there. I'd love to understand, where does a company like the fastest growing retailer in the US, which is TikTok, how do they play into this? They've been driving user behavior and really kind of setting the tone with a whole generation of users around how to engage with commerce, content, shopping. What's their role in the game here? And with relation to AI and ChatGPT, what's their play?
Well, I guess for any company, whoever owns that front door of where the consumer is going to be in a strong position to then, whatever happens after that from a commerce perspective, you've kind of got that consumer and you can shape what they see or potentially help them find a product. So I think for TikTok, it's a little different, isn't it? Because as long as they still maintain the audience up front, that people are consuming videos and like enjoying the content, following people, finding products through that method, then they can always own that TikTok shop, area. I think with the retailers, obviously, they're more interested in getting into the large scale audience that an LLM already has. And maybe TikTok are too, but I think if anything, they're competing for the attention and the time up front.
Yeah.
So I think retailers, it's more like, how do we tap into this as an opportunity? There's a huge audience here. There's people interrogating things, looking up products, searching for how-tos. Maybe we can then provide something that's useful to them. So I think it's a different case if you're TikTok, who already has that front door, if you like, of attention.
Yeah, already has that huge audience and all those eyeballs. They'll probably end up competing quite strongly with ChatGPT because they've got the entertainment, they've got the infotainment, so to speak. I think they're going to see more feature kind of updates and more innovation coming from the likes of TikTok to really keep those audiences engaged and in their platforms.
And I think obviously it's a bit out of the commerce space, but we've got things like Sora 2 and like the Vibes product from Meta, where it's actually AI created content that people are consuming there. So that then is a much more direct competitor to someone in terms of just attention span and like people spending time on it, and to TikTok. So where did TikTok go in terms of AI created content as well? That's interesting. Like, does it take away from their platform because it's all real people doing real things, or is it additive, or do they have a separate stream for that type of content?
Because there's a snobby angle to take, isn't there, around this? It's that, they put everything in the AI slop bandwagon. But at the end of the day, there's some great stuff out there that's been created it's entertaining, that is getting people's attention, and some super cool stuff. Rog, listening to that in particular around TikTok, and then we're obviously talking about the retail media and the broader commerce media space. You got your traditional media channels. We've mentioned streaming today. You're a marketer as well. What's your advice for a marketer going, Jesus, there's just so much out there. There's so much more fragmentation. I've got to worry about search engine optimization. I've got to worry about how I show up in the LLMs. What's your advice for marketers if we're kicking off the 2026? How do they stay in touch with all this stuff?
Yeah, it does feel like there's always something new, but the old things don't go away. So there's always this expanding opportunity or remit that needs to be covered. So I definitely feel the challenge there. I guess like with any marketing, you need to focus on where the consumer is and where the eyeballs are and like where people are spending their time. And as these new platforms come in and people start, gain consumers' attention, gaining transactions, perhaps even down the track, then it becomes something that you need to focus on. Obviously, more mature channels, we're going to have a lot more, optimized way of approaching those. We'll have ways of working that are well established and, perhaps, not quite as much time spent there in terms of attention because we know what we're doing there already. I think that was my point up at the start of this podcast, is that sometimes you need to over-index your attention and project time on things that are new and try and crack them and try and understand them. And I guess that's probably what is happening in some of these newer spaces. But, it doesn't negate the importance of those big channels that already exist. I mean, for us, we'll have tools in play as well. So we've got our triple M modeling and ways of understanding which channels are working. And, that broad brushstroke across different channels is important so that we're not getting caught up into those metrics we shouldn't pay attention to, which are the last click and the, ROI numbers. Obviously important efficiency sort of measures, but they're not the full story. And we need to see that bigger, broader brushstroke approach. And
as a result, I mean, we're seeing some consolidation as well. Like we're seeing, the 7 and is it ARN? Is that right? Have I got that right?
SEA, isn't it?
SEA. Sorry. Yep. I had it right. Do you think we'll see a lot more consolidation, and will that make things easier in the traditional media sense, Rog?
Potentially, yeah. Like always.
Any big tips?
I don't have any insider tips for you, but
juicy bits.
I think in the start of a life cycle, fragmentation usually happens. We see that in retail media. We're probably going to see that in AI as well. But then at the other end of the scale, then you start getting, when it's a much more mature medium or channel, then you're going to get more consolidation and things come together in terms of bigger opportunities. And in theory, easier to buy. You can buy greater reach from one entry point. So it's all very understandable. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see how we go. Like retail media is one where we're getting to that stage where there's going to be way more entry points in terms of how to buy it, and potentially some consolidation on the other side in terms of, networks and ways to buy across multiple retailers.
Yeah.
Now, Rog, we did warn you at the top of the podcast, because we're speaking so much about AI, this podcast is likely to air in early January, and that's at the age in AI. So this next question is going to be a tough one, and I'd love you to consider that. Looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what do you think a typical shopping journey is going to look like? Is it fully commerce media world, especially with AI? Is it the decision-making is embedded into the discovery? What does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think 5 to 10 years is too far ahead to be having any kind of prediction or forecast. But
2 to 3.
In the sort of medium term, let's say. Look, I think this year, this Q4 will be definitely like the testing phase of things like AI and agentic commerce. It's certainly not going to move the dial in terms of any kind of bottom line numbers or top line numbers. But I think what happens next year, because of the exponential growth in that space, there's so much growth, so much development of products, new releases. And as we've discussed, consumers are already there in terms of like the adoption. If you look at the numbers, like 700, 800 monthly active users every week on some of these platforms. So it can't be an insignificant amount of the activity that's happening there, certainly by next, like Q4. So I think really interesting times. Like we're going to have new tools, new ways of discovering products, new ways to compare products. And we haven't even got to the application layer. Like all we're looking at now is the really generic tools that have come out, the big tech players, LLMs. Think about it when we get those vertical solutions that are specific to an industry. Like there's one example is like Daydream, where it focuses purely on fashion. you can interrogate it with natural language, but then it links up with all the fashion retailers and can suggest outfits. And, you can say, I'm going to an event, I'm doing a keynote, what should I wear? And it will give you a whole recommendation based on your fashion profile. So that's just one example that's very specific to an industry. But imagine when we've got that level of thought and attention and product development on top of a particular vertical, it's going to get really interesting to see how much value they can really add.
So, I mean, media people love a headline. It sounds like you're saying next year's the year of agentic commerce coming of age. Is that what you're saying? Or
let's say that coming of age is a good way to put it, because that's very still not non-specific, but I like the sound of that.
Yeah, let's land on the coming of age. I like that too. I feel like a boomer saying this, but enough of the AI talk. We've talked enough.
Okay.
Let's just change tack for a moment, because we could talk AI like all day long. You're a founding member of the IAB Retail Media Council, which launched back in 2023. Since then, IAB has broadened its definition, shifting from retail media to commerce media as the umbrella term. What's your take on that distinction? And do you see the council evolving or expanding its remit to reflect the broader shift towards commerce media? This is a really interesting space. I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, look, I think it is expanding its definition. It started with retail media, but it absolutely should expand to commerce media.
Yeah.
In terms of the discussions we're having, we're definitely covering it as a broader topic. I mean, the way I think about it, retail media is a subset of commerce media. So, obviously there has to be a retailer involved, and it's a specific type of, publisher or media owner, let's call them, in this space. Whereas commerce media can be a lot broader. So it's, potentially the travel companies, potentially the credit card companies, which have a different view on the world. And again, it's not an either or, as we talked about with the AI piece. It's that credit card company has a really broad multi-merchant view across what a consumer might be doing. So they can have a really broad view on the world, and maybe they don't go as deep down to a SKU level as a retailer. And that's where retail media comes in, because you can track all the way through to the purchase and know exactly what's in that basket. Whereas a commerce media player might, just have that broad view on the world, really interesting profiles and segments, but can't get down to that final SKU. Both are valuable, both play a part in the mix.
Yeah, right.
just on that, for me, it's also the expansion for the retail media guys into off-net, which I think they're all starting to explore properly now. They're hitting maturity around their first offering and foray into the space. Do you know anyone that's doing it well, Rog? Do you think that's unlocking that data and as a retail media network and actually, expanding across, social or the open web?
I don't think there is any one retailer I think it's a really broad set of people doing that, because it's really, retail media is then just media. You're just using that data set to reach people, through DV360, through the trade desk, across Meta. And there was just hundreds of companies doing that now. So they're doing it really well. And the data set they have had is really high efficacy. It's great to know what a consumer's been shopping before, what they've habitually bought, what we can complement that with. And so we work with a ton of different retailers in that space. But it's almost already mature, right? Because it's just programmatic advertising, really. It's the landscape we all know and love. And it's just the retailers are now being able to sort of reach their shoppers out and about in that world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a question that Nick has asked a couple of times. We've discussed it is retail media just going to become media, and that they're from media now with the technology and those players being involved with their data, with instant checkout? Is it just going to become a hygiene factor that there's that CTA or there's that opportunity to shop from any piece of content across the web? It's certainly something we believe in from a Voodoo perspective. Your thoughts?
I think, as we said, retail media is just media in our world. I think it's a specific type of media. It's a specific, really it's just data is what we're talking about when we're talking offsite. So it's the ability to target that shopper. So yeah, absolutely. Really important part of the mix. And that's exactly what you're looking for. You want the media to perhaps reach some awareness and reach your frequency goals. But if you can then track it all the way through to a closed loop outcome as well, then that's the best of both worlds. It's sort of the marketing nirvana, right? Where you can
absolutely
create the reach, create the scale, but also the outcome.
We get that quote, marketing nirvana. Love it. We'll take that. Thank you very much. Now we're going into what we love here is a quick fire set of questions, Rog. All right.
The tension builds.
There's nothing to be concerned about. It's just we'd love to get a fast answer. Some really interesting comes to this. So are you ready?
Ready.
What is the last thing you bought online?
I'm trying to think.
Checks browser.
Well, I ordered some passports. I don't know if I'd pay for those. So I've got some passports on the way.
There you go. What podcast are you currently listening to? I'd like to know this one.
So I really like the retail Agentic one. Commerce Media Matters, always on rotation, of course. And obviously things like Kiri Masters, the Breakfast Club is always good.
We love Kerry.
We love Kiri. Yep. I don't think the government website for ordering passports is your go-to online shop. So what is your go-to online shop?
I am all in on Amazon in terms of like day-to-day shopping. So yeah, that's where my subscribers and saves sit, and like obviously has the always topped up in terms of a place to go look first, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you do TikTok? So if you do, are you a watcher or a poster? Are you getting out there with the dancing, Rog? Any retail media dancing?
I don't spend too much time on TikTok, actually.
No, not at all.
Not really a TikTok.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram a little. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And speaking of Instagram, have you ever bought anything on social media? Or do you shop regularly on it, perhaps?
I wouldn't say regularly, but I think it's perfect for that inspiration that for a product that you didn't know you needed, I guess is where it comes in handy.
Yeah.
So I think just bits and pieces like around the house, like some little air fresheners for the car, just random things like that where you just see it and think, yeah, that would be handy.
That works. Yeah. You've been around the game for a while, so this is a good one. What's your most memorable ad campaign?
Yeah, so I guess I would say this working for Diageo, but I do love some of the Guinness campaigns. So tapping into those really strong kind of branding cues that we have for Guinness, and then some of those classic ones with the swimmer going around and coming back. And it's like the things.
Yeah, amazing creative.
Some of the comedy and some of the classics that are just great ads.
Good call.
Well, Rog, thanks for joining us. Great chat, insightful. You are what I call Australian retail media royalty. And certainly today you proved that. Great answers, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, mate.
Yeah, good to be here. Great chat.
And we'll get you back on again.
Can't have gone too badly then. So thank you.
No, it's fantastic. And things just change so rapidly. So we'll get you back. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Commerce Media Matters podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe. We're always on the pulse of the ever-changing landscape of commerce media, ready to share the newest trends, insightful perspectives, and expert opinions with you. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep making media that matters. This podcast is executively produced and edited by Priya Tahazadeh, with co-producers Sandy Ho, Meg Lirsch, and me, Rachel Fang. This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Bidjigal, Gadigal, and Wurundjeri people, and we wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land.